right, we're here. Yeah, BREEUAna Sagdal is our guest today. Good to see you, BREEAuna.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So we're by the way, we're in my studio with the child running around. So you're gonna hear lots of joyous laughter and interruptions. Hope that's okay with y'all. But BREEAuna, you're a mom of two.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And a husband, and you live out in the Molalla, beautiful area out there.
That's right. Yeah.
And we connected through a mutual friend who you have done activism with.
Right. Yeah. We met at the Capitol and rallied for medical freedom together. Yeah.
Yay. All right. And so we met at a little birthday gathering for her son the other day, and like weirdly, I had just come back from like this crazy protest event where I filmed a clip of the police kneeling, and that went viral. But I also immediately got some really negative feedback for even posting that clip. So I was sharing that with you at the party, and you and I just sat down for like an hour, just like really connected, like deeply. And ironically, I didn't even know who I was talking to. But at one point you told me you had just run for Multnomah County Commissioner and lost, but you had
Clackamas County.
Sorry, yeah. Clackamas County. Thank you.
So good.
And I had just been supporting Ozzie Gonzales for mayor of Portland, so we both had a lot of connection on politics, and then not to mention I had a really strong interest in hearing what you were saying to all different kinds of issues, especially related to what's going on in our country right now with COVID and the protests about Black lives being important, and coming to realize soon, into our discussion that you're actually conservative and Republican and Christian, which is like amazing that we were sitting in the table, like actually agreeing on all that stuff. Because
on everything,
I'm like
right down the line,
right down to the core. Because I'm actually leaning liberal, and I used to be Christian, but I'm like more like kind of all religions, or kind of like the hippie. I kind of am a hippie. Let's just be honest, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So like we were like blown away. Like we were like, and then you were saying you kind of have had this happening a lot. You've been wanting to start like a conversation or even a podcast, maybe where we talk about the reds and the blues kind of meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of us that are, and then we would call it the whites. So red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
So anyways,
yeah, that white is like that. That sacred ground where people make an alliance and an agreement to meet heart to heart, just as human beings, and discuss, the issues that we do agree on. And, the beautiful thing, Ryan, is that what I'm seeing is that we agree on so many more things than we're being led to believe in this, divide and conquer tactic of the media. Yeah. And I think that, it's really unfortunate. Like in my race, what we ended up with were two really polarized individuals running against one another. And, in most of the issues, what I presented was this really nice, happy medium where like, okay, I'll just give you one example. Like, so for the courthouse, Clackamas County Courthouse is, it's tiny. It is, unable to serve the growing population of Clackamas County, and it needs to be replaced. And it's been part of the plan since like 1985 to move the Clackamas County Courthouse to the Red Soils campus in the Oregon City area. And so our courthouse is, more or less crumbling. We've got issues with the ductwork and, airflow, and, it's going to end up in the Willamette if we have even like the tiniest of earthquakes. So it definitely needs to be replaced. But the plan is to use 190 million tax dollars in order to completely build like this homage to injustice, as I called it. Right. Yeah. And really, like, until we start getting more constitutional courts, I don't feel comfortable creating a mega dome to lawlessness, in my opinion. And so I want the focus to be on having an actual just court. Anyways, I kind of digress. But
okay, we do that.
Like all of my food.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Good job, sister.
She's been making stews of fruit salad for us.
Oh, awesome.
And more.
And more.
And
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Fantastic.
And they like to play last one.
Yay! You guys
Ready?
need to get an iguana now.
Yeah. Why an iguana? Because that's what iguanas eat. They
That's
like
what
the water.
they eat.
on
Yeah,
the-
exactly. That's like, it's like
I
an
have
iguana
seen-
stew.
I've seen that
Yeah.
before. What is that all about? That's so funny.
That's what they eat.
Okay, well, we gotta get an iguana. in here.
Okay. All right. So we totally digress there.
Yes.
But back to the courthouse.
Oh.
Anyways, so I propose that we use one of the current abandoned buildings that are in the same vicinity and we repurpose it. Like, why do we have to rebuild something in a particular spot?
Wow.
Because that was the plan pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And now, nobody has any money to spare. Businesses are like quadruple taxed. We have redundant taxes coming from the state, from the county, and then even from the cities too. And so it just doesn't feel like a very fair conversation. Well,
by the way, I love the repurposing idea, and that's one of these ideas where we can cross the aisles because, in my liberal circles, we're always talking about the 4 R's: reuse, reduce, recycle, rebuy,
Thank
whatever.
you.
But you get that too.
I totally get that.
That's great.
Well, and I just don't, we have so much government waste and so much government spending. And like our government is the largest procurer of services, of vehicles, of gas, of emissions, of, you go down the line and government uses more than we the people.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about, cutting carbon and cutting emissions and, focusing on our environmental issues, like let's start in our own backyard. Like let's hold our government accountable. And I think
which, by the way, as you all are listening, is a very interesting comment coming from a conservative, because conservatives obviously want less government presence,
right?
But it's funny that conversation doesn't usually come up that often about government spending on their own luxuries, and it needs to.
It really does.
So, thank you.
I'm the great kid chef.
Thank you, sweetie.
You're getting started now.
We've already started.
Yeah.
We're recording.
We're going.
She sneaks out. Oops, sorry guys.
Oh man.
Anyways, she's trying to keep us on our toes.
See, this is what I love about like more liberally minded people. Like that would be completely just like unacceptable in a conservative podcast.
I know.
It's like,
have you seen the guy? There was like a year ago or something. There's some sort of news broadcast. It might have been CNN or something. But there was a guy being interviewed, like he's a professor or something, but he was at home working, and his Asian wife, like a little kid, opens the door to his office while he's on like the news.
Sure.
And he's on a Skype call, but like it's evening or something, so he must have been at home.
Yeah.
The kid comes in, is like dancing around, and you see this Asian woman, his wife, like horrified, running into the kind of like with the socks on, like screeching to a halt, like Tom Cruise in that movie. And she like grabs the kid, and then she's holding a baby in her other arm, and she's trying to get the baby out the door, but the baby's not coming, and the dad's like kind of like, what's going on? And he pauses for a moment in the middle of this interview, and he's shaking his head. You can tell he's mortified. And then finally the wife like closes the door and get out of there, and he's just like, he kind of pretends like it didn't happen. And it went viral on the internet because everybody's like, when you just gotta admit that you're at home.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And so so I'm trying to keep it real here.
Yeah.
We're at home. This is COVID times. Stasia, try to keep it down a little bit. That's a little too much. But
Definitely
yes, our
keep it
point
around.
is being made.
Well, and
anyway,
and that's something that like I think that like here's another issue, right? So like conservatives don't believe in abortion, for example. Like, well, how about we start supporting women to like have their kids, right? Like, how about we make kids more prevalent?
There you go.
I think our children need to be more visible and a little bit more audible.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, as a father now, I see the most, especially because of COVID, I think for a lot of us, our priorities in life has become really clear. I don't know about you, but like family is like number one for me. And I noticed how little time I've been getting to spend with my family. And thanks to COVID, now that we actually love each other. We've made it through. Like, sure, there's been the butting heads moment. Like, you're in your nice space, get out of here right now. But like, most of the time we're just like, I crave this time with you. I'm finally getting to spend time with you. And my daughter's just like so much happier than she's ever been.
Right.
I bet your kids are
too.
Yeah.
It's been transformational.
So you realize all of a sudden that like the kids should be the number one moment. So if they want to be on our podcast, fine. Let them
Right.
be on our podcast.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I see your point. And
I just think like we need to be supporting women a lot more, and
Absolutely.
dads.
Well, thank you, yeah.
Like really, like the family is the backbone
Yeah.
of American society, and that's where we need to reshift our focus to.
You know, as the breadwinner in our family, and that's not always the case. Sometimes women are the breadwinner, but I've noticed that I even work out of home, and I still barely even have time to participate in the home activities. And it has been so nice to just have things slow down during COVID, because I'm able to like clean the house like I did for you this morning, you know, and like spend 2 hours on a Sunday morning cleaning the house, and it's like, oh man, I can participate too, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, supporting dads to actually break out of that work, especially if they're the breadwinners, and just get back into the family.
Yeah.
It's been super nice.
And I want to say, like, gosh, dads are so important.
Oh.
And
you got a good husband?
I do. I have an
Props
amazing
to your
husband.
What's his name again?
Matt.
Hey,
Yeah.
Matt. Props to you. He was really sweet when I talked to him.
He's like
holding your kid in his arm
Yep.
and chasing the other one. That's how I met him.
He's a good man. He's a really good man. And, you know, and he's the reason that I was able to run for office. He completely
Beautiful.
supported everything that I did. And, yeah, really grateful for him. And so dads are so vital to our society. And I think that is a really, you know, powerful segue into, you know, what's happening in the Black community in particular with men.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, what's going on is it's sickening, right? Yeah. Families are being destroyed, and, you know, and I think like kind of the silver lining to come out of these protests and all of this anger and outrage, I think the one thing that we can come together and look at is, oh my gosh, we really agree like on this issue. And maybe we don't have as much societal, you know, racism as we do necessarily systemic, and policies that, you know, and weigh in and let me know, like maybe I'm totally off base on this, you know, but maybe it's more of, you know, a systemic issue that we need to address through, you know, limiting our government and, you know, repealing legislation that is clearly not working, like Compass, for example. You know, we have, you know, racial profiling before a police officer even gets out of their vehicle. They're pulling up license plates, they're checking driver's license, and people have a rating now. You know, we're like slowly coming into this era of social scoring, and how horrible would that be if our, you know,
if we ended up like China,
right? Or
if you haven't heard their social scoring now, every
I know.
citizen has a, and you're denied like the basic rights, like you can't travel if your social score is too low, like. Yeah,
right.
Like that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like straight up Black Mirror type of, you know.
Black Mirror?
Yeah.
That's a crazy show, by the way.
It is. And it's crazy because it's like,
but it's
coming
real.
true.
It's true.
I know. I sometimes wonder if these are like self-fulfilling prophecies. Like, darn you, George Orwell.
I know.
How did you know?
In a way, and this is where I come from with Sacred Rebel in a lot of ways, or disclosure.
Yeah, for sure.
Things that are already happening that, sure, like, yes, I agree with you. There is the self-fulfilling prophecy. What you focus on is what you'll create, as well as, like, did you know that there's a lot of things going on already setting the stage for a lot of these things that Black Mirror is talking about?
Right. Like, you know, it certainly wasn't a self-fulfilling prophecy to have the CIA, like, run, you know, crack cocaine through South Central.
Right. We didn't know about that.
No, we certainly didn't manifest that in any which way.
My point. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's totally about disclosure. I just, you know, I like to kind of say it on the flip side just to...
Which I love. That's perfect. We need to flip side each other and listen, you know.
Oh, no.
Who's calling?
Sorry.
Is that your husband?
No, it is.
Okay. They can wait?
They can wait.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, you have to wait, whoever you are.
No, but, you know, I think, like, what's really important right now is coming together and having these conversations, like we were talking about, and meeting in that sacred space, that sacred ground. And
I love that phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know,
it is sacred ground.
It is.
You know, like when we sat at that table and we didn't even know each other's backgrounds, but we agreed on everything, and then we realized, oh, you're conservative. Oh, you're liberal. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. That was sacred because we saw each other as humans first. Oh, and I wanted to bring that up too. Like, going back to your race, your Clackamas County Commissioner political race. You were telling me that that race, as well as like the mayor race and a bunch of other races, are nonpartisan.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting to me.
Oh yeah.
Because in a way you have an opportunity to be seen as a human being, not as a Democrat or a Republican.
You'd wish. You'd hope.
Right, but you were saying something about how people would not hesitate to ask you whether you're a Democrat or Republican, trying to dig into you about where you were coming from.
Right.
When really all you would answer was just what your platform was, right?
I really just tried to push the issues, and I really just tried to lead. And what's funny once again is that by looking at where I stand on the issues, people aren't able to tell which side of the aisle I'm on.
I love that.
Well, I mean, that's just crazy, right? Because
it should be.
Well, it really should. I mean, are we fighting people or are we fighting issues?
Mm.
And I think that's where it really needs to come. That's where we need to get back to is we need to be fighting for change and not fighting one another.
And, it's so funny that you said that. Okay, so as a Republican or a conservative, whatever you want to label yourself as, or I don't like labels, so maybe we don't need to label each other. But how about this? As a person who has seen the inside circles of the Conservative Party, let's call it that. Okay. And me too, because I don't consider myself a liberal. I lean liberal, but I've seen those sides, right? Yeah. More than I've seen your sides. Do you feel like the call for change is stronger than ever with the I mean, you think of conservative, and just the word conservative means conserve, no change. Liberal, progressive wants change. But now, what are your feelings about just the call for change within that?
Well, that's interesting. That's a really interesting perspective. So I would say conservative meaning as in you take a measured response to things. Okay. That would be my perspective.
A measured response.
A measured response.
And why measured?
So measured as in not necessarily emotional or passionate or reactionary.
Beautiful.
But a measured response is sitting down and thinking about things logically and critically.
Beautiful.
Before stepping out into action. And
what's interesting, can I just say? Yeah. That is the one thing about the protests which I have had some issues with. Is that it's all been rage and outcry, which I fully understand. And I'm with that part of it. There is when I saw what happened to George Floyd, for me personally,
I raged inside too.
I raged inside and wanted to just do horrible things to the system. I think we all did. I had Molotov cocktails in my brain. Right. But I didn't go out and do them because personally I know from my years of experience in politics, I majored in politics, that the most effective way to make change is, number one, through civil conversations like we're having right now. Exactly. And you can go and get your rage out, but just know that that's not the way that most of the change is going to happen. Yeah. Sorry. Absolutely. So anyways, you were saying.
No. Okay. So you're asking me am I seeing this push for change? Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing is for a massive push for reform. And so here's two really interesting things about Oregon, right? So Oregon is its own political microcosm, and you cannot compare national politics or even another state to the state of Oregon. We have had 40 years. Wow. Okay. No, seriously.
We're our own republic, aren't
we? Well, if that's what you want to call it, it's more like mob rules. But
yeah, interesting.
Okay, look, Oregon has had 40 years of one party rule. What?
Which party?
The Democrat Party.
Oh, I did not in state or Portland politics.
Both.
Both. Wow.
In particular,
which is so interesting because, as you may understand now, the whole state is red except Portland and Eugene. Well, is what I understand, right?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
so
that's interesting.
Okay, so Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and Washington County, or Metro. Yeah. Okay, and parts of Metro, those are sort of the primary holdouts. So for cap and trade, for example, and that was a really big misunderstood issue, which the Democrats, for example, in our state, ended up saying that people are okay. But hold on.
I don't believe in cap and trade, by the way, but we could go there.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, we should go there at some point because
conspiracy theory ideas about it. But go ahead.
Well, I have so much information to explain to people, but I'll just say this, okay? Yeah. The Democrats, literally, Jenny Burdick and Peter Courtney, so the and Tina Kotek. So Tina Kotek is the Speaker of the House. Peter Courtney is the Senate Majority Leader. And then Jenny Burdick is like, she steps in and she is the Majority Leader at times. And she's also like, she whips votes at times too.
Okay.
Anyway, bottom line is Jenny Burdick told the press that the people were too stupid to understand cap and trade, and therefore they could not refer the vote to the people.
Whoa.
And so the Republicans just kept pushing and pushing and pushing to refer cap and trade to the ballot.
Yeah.
Because they want us, we the people, to be able to vote. And literally it is a tax, and any tax should be, and by our Constitution states, it can only pass by 2/3 majority.
See, what I hear when the Democrats are saying they don't want the people to vote because they can't understand it is what they're saying is we don't want the people to understand it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what my conspiracy theory is about cap and trade. Is that there's shady stuff going on behind the scenes.
Totally
where
shady.
Cap and trade is actually not what we think it is, and it's gonna enable people who are on the elite to profit, but it's not gonna really help what we're trying to do.
Well, and here's the thing: like there was a clause in this last session's form of cap and trade, which was HB 1530, and it would have created a total media blackout. So currently we can file public records requests as just individuals or as press.
Okay.
And we can get public records from the governor's office.
Okay.
About issues, pertaining to whatever story or whatever we're trying to find out, right? So if I want the governor's emails from this date to that date, then I just put in a public request, and there's actually like a website in a form that you go in, just fill it out really quick, and that all of that information belongs to us, the people, right? Because the governor works for us, we pay her salary, and all of her information belongs to us.
Thank you.
And but that would not have been the case with cap and trade. And
what
oh
my God, this is news to me. Wow.
Well, so there was a clause that would have completely blocked out any information. So, like,
whoa,
for example,
everything I just said. They don't want us to know what it's about.
I know.
Oh my God.
So, like, say for example, like California comes in, they buy up all the credits at auction, right? And then, or say maybe a foreign state, like maybe China, right? They need credits. Maybe India needs credits because they pollute, like MF right? And so in an effort to be compliant on the global scale or whatever, they buy up all little organs, credits. Yeah. And then like mom and pop shops can't operate anymore. Right? Like you just put out your favorite sub company. Right?
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Your little bakery you go down to in the morning, you get your bagels, your croissants, and your coffee.
It's kind of like what it ends up doing is centralizing power.
It totally does.
Right?
100%. Yeah. 100%. And to me, being conservative means we decentralize power.
Right.
And like we're constantly making sure that there's not an accumulation or a monopoly on wealth or the ability to create wealth.
Which, by the way, is the core principle behind Bitcoin. But like any good new novel idea, it gets co-opted.
Totally.
Which we talked about already.
Yeah. But I like the idea of blockchain technology because it's like potentially unhackable. I mean, I don't know. I'm like totally technologically.
No, you're right. It's supposed to, that the core of it is that it's supposed to be unhackable. I mean, do you know how a Bitcoin is created?
No.
Can I speak to
yes,
that?
Please.
It's insane. And actually, it's not environmentally friendly at all.
Oh.
So they task a computer to solve an algorithm that's basically a human would never be able to solve it. And it takes computers, even a computer, like a long time to solve one of these algorithms. And so what they end up doing is computer's, like, let's just say my laptop, right, was trying to solve one of these problems. It would take months and months and months and months for it to figure out this math problem. And yeah, it's crazy. And then you would, like, let's say the supercomputer of the world, there's only like a few, right? They could probably solve it in a couple hours or a day or whatever, but there's only a limited number of those supercomputers. So what people are doing now, like in China and Mongolia even, they have these centers, they're tying together the computers to share the processing power to create their own little mini supercomputers.
Is that what a blockchain is?
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
But they're called crypto centers or something. I don't even know. But like basically they're these huge warehouses now. And they're actually combining, like, a lot of these poorer countries are bringing in older laptops, but then when they tie them all together in a network, they create this massive amount of processing power. And every day they can actually solve tons of these Bitcoin problems. And so they're generating Bitcoin, because the whole point of Bitcoin is that once you solve that equation, that math equation, which by the way changes all the time, every time you solve it, then there's a new one. And
my brain, like, it's already.
I don't
like,
even understand it either. But then once you solve it, you get a Bitcoin. And so you can task your computer, if you want to just generate Bitcoin, you can task your computer to try to solve these problems, and it will. But it's like after 6 months, you'll get a Bitcoin. So yay!
Wow.
But like these computers, so these companies have invested in all this money in these computers. But can you imagine the electricity draw?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's not a sustainable currency, because if you want to keep just generating all this Bitcoin, it's like the whole world's going to be having these power issues.
Yeah.
Not exactly. But, back to cap and trade, which is interesting because it could all tie in where, we're all trying to generate, it'll incentivize people to generate sustainable energy. But at the same time, it's like, I think what's happening is it's being co-opted. The idea was for every individual to be generating Bitcoins off their laptops. Now what's happening is it's not worth it to me to generate Bitcoin on my laptop, because there's these companies out there now that have the ability to generate Bitcoin in hours to days versus me only 6 months. So big people with money are now co-opting it.
Of course.
And it's big. Basically what's going to happen is the people who have the money are going to be the ones that own the Bitcoin generation.
Wow.
And it's going to be centralized when the whole point was to decentralize it.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin has now become the controversial topic, which is why it's not doing so.
That's
why it's not doing so well.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think we really need to move back to a commodities-based currency.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all of our money is fiat, and it has been fiat since I think it was like May 9th, 1939, right?
Yeah.
The whole, like, the New Deal, just like the raw New Deal is what it should have been called.
The raw New Deal?
Yeah. The raw deal.
Oh, the raw deal.
Yeah.
RAW, the raw New Deal. Yes, yes.
But, I mean, I understand, like, it was, parts of that was necessary in order to bring our country out of that, complete devastation of the Depression. But, I mean, we're building up to that, Depression Part 2 right now.
Absolutely.
And, like, we're there. Like, we're going to end up,
They're calling
this time,
it the Greater Depression.
The Greater Depression, lovely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, it's interesting because, conservatives are not necessarily like, for example, like, I would consider myself to be an environmentalist.
Yeah, you love animals.
I absolutely love animals. I moved to the country because I'm a steward of the lands. Like, our family has lived off the land, in agriculture, in agricultural terms.
Can I pause you right there?
Yeah.
I'm just going to, because I want to hear what you're saying about, and by the way, you're talking about the Greater Depression and being a conservative, but also being an environmentalist, right? Can I just pause you right there?
Sure.
Don't forget that, because I want to hear where you're going. But I'm going to interrupt you. I spent a greater portion of 2 years of my life as a Christian environmentalist, advocating with this group called Target Earth. We went around to multiple Christian music festivals around the country, genuinely trying to get Christians to understand that the Bible in Genesis, is it 3:17 or 3:19? I think it's 3:17, talks about how it's our call to be stewards of the earth.
Right.
And Genesis 3:17 is about how we have dominion over the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you dive into that word dominion in the Latin translation versus other translations, like, it could mean stewardship or it could mean dominate. And it's interesting that, Christians at the hand of political parties, like the conservative parties, have taken the stance that word means dominate. And so corporations have had free run of the earth. When a person like me, who was neither Democrat nor Republican at that point in my life, but actually at that point in my life leaning Republican because I was a Christian, was trying to convince the people in my life and my circles that it actually meant we were supposed to be stewards.
Okay. Can I blow your mind really quick?
Please, yes, please.
Okay. So I know that there is that misconception about conservatives and environmentalism.
Yeah.
I think there's two main points to address.
Okay, please.
Like, for one, for cap and trade, for example.
Yeah.
Did you know that all of Oregon's biggest polluters had a carve out in cap and trade?
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only reason it didn't pass last year, 2020,
Yeah.
the only reason why the Democrats didn't have the votes is because Senator Mona Sanderson, she represents Gresham.
Okay.
Boeing is in her district.
Oh, they're in Gresham. Back up here. We're recording again.
No.
we just lost the recording for a second, so we had to get it back started again. And of course, Breeauna and I started into a fun topic. Wait, so what did you just say?
Oh, goodness.
Say this again.
Okay, but I want to get back to cap and trade.
Okay,
Like,
we'll hold that thought.
Oh, good grief.
Go, where were you just going?
Okay, so what I was saying is I honestly believe that humanity is devolving, not evolving.
Interesting.
And I truly believe that we had technology, I don't know, in Plato's day or, Roman Empire and prior.
Because Plato talked about the city of Atlantis.
Yes.
With all this amazing technology.
Well, but then also, you look at how the pyramids were built, and we cannot replicate that.
Yeah, they've actually taken cranes out to try to lift the same size blocks, and the biggest cranes in the world that we have to not do it.
Exactly.
How the
we could not recreate that today.
We can't do it.
And so I believe that we had tools and we had things, technology available then that we don't have today, or
you
that we
believe,
lost.
By the way, that 7,000 slaves rolled up on
No,
logs.
I don't. I don't.
Just
I
saying.
don't. I mean, it's just as plausible that we had giants roaming the earth back then who built it.
Actually, I'm listening to some theories about that right now.
Yeah, the Book of Enoch.
Yes, the Book of Enoch, and they've found all over the world.
Yeah.
Skeletons
Skulls,
that were the 12 to 20 foot range.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Smithsonian has hidden this information.
Yes! High five! This woman, Breeauna, you are in the same realm of stuff I've been studying. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah.
I think we all have our own personal journey.
Oops. Yes, and that is why, by the way, hold on. That is why I'm doing this podcast, because I think a lot of the things that we just mentioned, by the way, are in a lot of our minds, whether we're Democrat, Republican, communist, socialist, whatever. We all have these ideas, and I think they're coming to the forefront of our minds right now as the house of cards that is the world systems are crumbling.
Right. And they want to keep boxing us in. They want to keep us divided and conquered and fighting one another. And and I think we have a particular class of individual who is stepping up and is not falling for those traps. And what's interesting is it's almost like cult behavior. Yeah. When I talk about needing, radical judicial reform, I get crucified from the right. When I talk about
I've been crucified lately too by the far
yes,
left.
You have. And it's cult mentality. When someone goes to leave the cult, everyone harasses and barrages them and berates them with, insults and so forth. And it's that's
they told me that I needed
an
intervention. I'm like, what? I need an intervention? I wasn't even trying to activist. I was just recording a moment. And
you hit film, you hit record, know, and and now you need to intervene.
I need an intervention.
That's some sick thought right there, though.
It's weird. Yeah,
it is weird, and we're seeing it on both sides.
Yeah,
and so when people are meeting in the middle and agreeing, and they're coming from two radically, different perspectives, and they're being told by everyone in society and the media and every school of thought that, we don't agree on anything and we're just, clashing heads and, and you're the enemy and I'm the enemy.
Right.
But when we actually sit down and we have these conversations, we realize that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
There's something really wrong going on here, right?
Yeah.
There's something really different and in order to get to the root of it, we're going to have to dispel all these labels and all of these boxing ins and we're going to have to start talking to each other.
I love it. I honestly believe that that's the only way that we're going to solve any issues and evolve in our society rather than evolve. Because like you said, what makes a person say that we're devolving as a society? Look what's happening. I just lost the friendships that were the closest to me over this post that I made.
That's nuts.
I made one post about how the police took a knee, and I thought that was beautiful, and I got nailed by some of the people that were the closest to me in my life for harming the Black Lives Matter movement, which, by the way, what I witnessed was the black leaders of the Black Lives Movement asking the police to take a knee, and that's what I filmed and said how beautiful was that, and then I'm told that like that was harming the Black Lives Matter movement because that is police doing what they call a tactic to take the movement's attention away from the Black lives that need to be lifted up and elevated, and giving some of that credibility back to the police, which honestly, I'm not playing a game here. I'm just witnessing a moment of love. I'm not trying to promote the police. I'm not trying to promote the Black Lives Matter. I'm just saying, oh my God, look at these humans. They're so loving. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And if there's a game being played underneath, I'm not seeing it. I don't know.
Well, the only game that I see currently is that we can somehow mobilize, millions of people to protest in the streets. And yet we can't mobilize these same people to get their asses to Salem. Excuse my French.
No, this is perfect.
But seriously, and so the game that I see is that whoever is like orchestrating, rioting, but then not organizing individuals to work on legislation.
Exactly.
Is funding. They're helping fund the police state. And so the hypocrisy just totally blows my mind.
Interesting.
Right? Because so guess who's going to show up in Salem? Like regardless of any of these people ever take a step into our Capitol or write or email a legislator or, have anything to do with, change, real change. Yeah. Guess who is going to show up next legislative session? The police unions and their lobbyists.
Oh, wow.
They pay a lot of money for lobbyists.
Yeah.
And they're going to show up next session and they're going to say, listen, our officers were tired. They were overwhelmed. They had, projectiles lobbed at them. And then we were, blamed for using nonviolent force. And so we need better means of, protecting the city. And this is the amount of damage that happened. And this is what it cost taxpayers.
And honestly, that sounds pretty reasonable. They're like, my cousin is in the police force in Portland. He's a very well-known officer. I went on the street and talked to officers and protesters, and every single officer knew my cousin. Okay, he's a captain in the force, and he's a detective, and he's a very sweet man. You probably love him. He's not a radical conservative. He is leaning conservative, but he's just a very calm. And I'm, as a liberal, love him. I've always been able to sit down at Christmas meals and Thanksgiving meals and have a conversation like we have with him, who's in the Portland City Police.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not out of the question.
Right.
Right? And so that's what I'm saying by the individuals who caused the looting, not the peaceful protest, but the looting and the violence and the damage. Whoever is perpetrating that is essentially creating a funding mechanism for...
Oh my God, they're funding the police.
Yes.
Instead of defunding the police.
Exactly.
Good point. Okay, so another thing I really want to say to everybody, too, is let's talk about allies. Like, when you have a movement and you're trying, like you're saying, you're trying to get people to Salem to help with legislation, why aren't people going? Well, like, you had an ally in me, people, as far as I don't want to see black people getting hurt anymore or killed. But when you acted the way that I did when I shared a loving moment between the police and the protesters, you lost an ally.
It's a bummer.
And now I'm going to be quiet about what you could have had me helping with. Yeah. And I see, like, for example, I used to be really active as an activist mostly in my life in the environmental movement. And as an environmentalist, I knew that we were on shaky ground with public support. So what I would do would be very gently and softly bring people into the movement rather than say to them, like, shame on you for throwing away that
You're
thing.
The problem.
You're the problem.
Right.
You didn't throw that in the compost. You threw it in the trash. You need to learn and blah, blah, blah. And you know what that does? That just makes people go, ooh, I don't like that. Your energy sucks, And so I knew that we would gently need to get people in. But what I see the social justice movement, and I'm sorry to say this, is like there's a lot of shaming going on. And how are you expecting to, like, bring people into your movement when we really do support you, but now I'm not interested in helping you?
That's so on point because nobody wants to be wrong.
Right.
Like, ever. Like, like, it's hard enough to, like, hear criticism.
Yeah.
But it really seems like there's this, like, public crucifixion of anybody who does rise up to take personal responsibility. And that is where we need to be careful. Because when someone steps up and says, listen, I recognize the role that I played in this, and I don't want to have that anymore, or I want to do X, Y, or Z to change it. Like, we need to be applauding those people, and we need to be supporting them, and not just, like, laying on, the blame or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, we need to create a space that is sacred, right?
I love that phrase.
Yes.
Sacred ground.
Sacred ground where everybody's right.
Mm.
There is a win-win. There is a way to make everybody right and, or correct or whatever the term you want to use. And have conversations without blame.
Absolutely.
And there's a way to say, look, these are just the facts, and this is like, okay, so back to like cap and trade, right?
Yes.
I'm going to circle back to cap and trade here.
These are how our podcasts work, by the way, on Sacred Row. They come full circle.
As long as we get back to it,
Yes.
right? So, but back to cap and trade, like a lot of people were angry that it didn't get passed, and they were saying, but this would have, created a tax for the largest polluters. Well, no, it would not have. There's two reasons for that. One is that all of Oregon's largest polluters were given an exemption. And ironically enough, those same companies were the largest donors to Kate Brown. Just saying.
Is she a Republican or a Democrat? I don't even know.
Kate Brown's a Democrat.
Is she? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I should know that because she does, as the Oregon governor, run a partisan ticket, right?
Very partisan.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironic that for mayor, there's no partisanship to it.
I don't think that's really possible.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Right? Yeah.
Because Ted Brown is a Democrat for sure, right?
Ted Wheeler?
Yeah, sorry, Ted Wheeler.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is interesting because when he was running against the other candidates, two of them, Ozzie and Teresa, seemed way more Democratic than he did.
Interesting.
From the platform he came across, seemed very conservative, in my opinion, compared to Ozzie and Teresa.
Wow.
Interesting.
Really interesting. You know what? I really like Sam Adams. I thought he was a great mayor.
Aww.
And, like, I don't care that he's gay. And I honestly, like, I mean, okay, it sucks that there was some scandal in his campaign, or whatever. Yeah. But, like, I'm sorry, who hasn't, slept with a staffer? Like, Sam, if you're hearing this, I love you, buddy. We miss you. You should have ended up getting elected to the city council. That's a bummer. Yeah. Anyway, so that being said, so back to cap and trade, like there really was no tax to the largest polluters, for one, and for two, all that cost just gets passed down to the consumer. Likewise, there was another bill called the Student Success Act, right? Air quotes.
Okay, I've heard of that.
And so what it did was it created what's called the corporate activity tax.
Oh.
And the governor had the opportunity to not have it start because it was supposed to go into effect like right now.
Okay.
In the middle, smack dab in the middle of COVID-19.
Oh, wow.
And they passed it with an emergency clause, which means we really can't repeal it. And the other thing is that it's actually so really it's a price gouging tax to us, the consumer, and it was never, that money was never going to go to education. So in order to have money allocated or earmarked for a particular issue, like education, for example, it would have to have a constitutional amendment that states where this money is going to go. We didn't have that. So the Student Success Act is literally more money going into the general fund, which Peter Courtney said on the Senate floor, it'll just like free up some funds and then we'll be able to allocate some money towards education. No, that's not good enough. There's no accountability.
Where's the rest of it going?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a PERS reform bill.
Wow.
But really, I mean, so honestly, it's in order to pay for PERS because it's such a mess.
It sounds like the $500 hammer story in the Pentagon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they do that. They try to allocate funds for something that's very ambiguous, and then really they're only spending $5 on the hammer, and $495 is going to somebody's pockets.
Or it's going to a system that's completely unsustainable. Did you know that we have PERS retirees in the state that are making more per month than you and I combined are making a year?
What? Oh my gosh.
Like $200,000 a month for some of our PERS retirees. I mean, it's insane.
Is that in public record?
Oh, yeah. It's all public
record. And nobody's
record.
calling them out on that?
We are.
Good.
I mean, our side's calling it out.
Good, because that's taxpayer money.
That's the thing. The Democrats have this idea that, you guys don't like your money or something.
That's interesting, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And or that you guys have no idea like how government works.
I
And
think
like
that's it. Yeah.
I really do.
I know from my circles, I think. Okay, so this is what I think, and sorry for those of you who disagree with me in my liberal circles, but I really think what most of us are, and this is just going to be a total general stereotype, but a lot of us, and not all of us, a lot of us are wearing our hearts on a sleeve, and a lot of us are kind of, artsy, fartsy type people, or, I would say we're not the kind of people that are very good with money in general. You don't know how to bean count very well. And so what we do is we want these humanitarian laws in effect and social services that will help people with sob stories. But then when it comes to the implementation of it, we have no idea. Or we don't follow it, or we don't investigate. We don't follow
really
through.
Fair.
And I would say conservatives are more the bean counter types. And they want to know where every single penny's going to.
Because we're paying for it.
You're paying for it, yeah. And generally, conservatives are the ones who own businesses and are good at it.
Right.
And what makes you a good business owner? Well, you freaking track where every bean goes.
Right.
And if it's not going somewhere that it should be going, you cut it.
Right.
And that's what you're good at doing in politics.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that.
Well, sure.
Wow.
That's my impression.
That was like... That felt really good.
Right on. And I have to say, I'm as a business owner now myself, I'm learning how poor I am at counting those beans.
Oof.
And we've made so much progress in our businesses, but realizing now that we're looking at our financial analysis over the past couple of years, we have it's like we took 2 steps forward or 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Like it's that thing about lifestyle creep. You earn more money and then you spend more money and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
You don't realize it unless you're counting your beans.
And you know what's funny is like you've got people that are looking at you or like looking at me and being like, you guys are rich and you guys don't need all that money.
Yeah.
I'm like, what money?
Right? What
like,
money? I don't know.
We're still living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
Like, now we have a house that we can like actually like, not touch each other in when, we're cooking or using the bathroom. But,
because we're not living in a commune anymore.
Or like a shoebox, know, but.
Or like, a shoebox, yeah.
Like our first house was literally a shoebox. Like, you'd be like in the kitchen and like handing, my husband a roll of toilet paper. Like, here you go,
that's kind of how we live, right? Honestly.
It's like,
yeah.
But I mean, okay, so now we have a little bit bigger house. Like we can stretch out. We're like not, tripping over each other.
That's our dream.
Sure, and it's a lot of people's dream. But you have to work to get there. Like you have to invest well, and like nothing was ever given to me, and especially not because of the color of my skin.
Too.
Right?
Yes, exactly. I'm with you on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, worked for every penny, so I totally understand where people come from now.
Yeah,
and they say that like. We weren't given any of this.
No, we got really lucky, though.
State,
I mean, we did really get lucky with where we were at.
Yeah.
We were at the right place at the right time when we were ready to buy into the market.
Okay.
And so we didn't even have that much money down, but the first-time homebuyer programs at the time, they were really good. And we had to look like high and low, but we were finally able to find a house that was in our price range. And we wrote the owners this really beautiful letter, and we begged them to come down in their price just a little bit.
Aww.
Like the house had been sitting on the market for a while at like $160,000, and our price range, like we could only like the very last top amount we could get financing for was like $150 or $155.
That's very low for the Portland area.
Oh, wow. I know. Well, it wasn't. It was actually in Vancouver.
Oh, okay. No wonder. All right. Yeah. I was going to say, that's unheard of in Portland.
I love Vancouver, by the way.
Yeah,
beautiful area. And I miss our neighbors. I miss that community. I really wish we could have stayed there, actually.
Oh.
But, so the owners, like, acquiesced, and they let us buy the house for $155,000.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were like, we're a new family. We have this new baby.
What year was that?
I want to say 2000 and maybe 16.
Oh, not that long ago.
No, not that long ago.
Oh, wow. Jeez, that's an incredible price. Jeez. Yeah. Because I don't know if you know this, but median home in Portland is now getting around at very low end $300,000.
Well, and we could even we could have long conversations about what's making that happen too.
Yeah.
because there's a lot, and the urban growth boundary was put into place to prevent that right there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, the most incredible thing about the urban growth boundary is that it prevents Portland from getting run down. Because, you have your 4 quadrants, and this is the most, beautiful thing that Tom McCall did. And that, and why
so cool.
Portland
you
is
are so studying on our local politicians. That's awesome. I love that.
So, Tom McCall has been, a hero of mine since I was, in middle school.
Well, that's amazing. I literally just looked him up the other day because of the whole Tom McCall waterfront.
Yeah.
And something came up in the news about him and how he started that. I'm like, okay, I have to Google this. And
yeah.
For the first time, I realized he was always a local politician.
Yeah.
Stuff,
well, it was incredible because, California was getting bought, their politicians were being bought out by GM and oil companies, right?
Wow.
And so they were, just sprawling and sprawling and sprawling so that people would have to drive. And Tom McCall was
that's why I moved out of California.
Yeah.
The only way I would have survived there is I would have had to have at least an hour commute, if not more. And
I know.
some people I know have 2-hour commutes.
Yeah, for sure. They spend the majority of their life in the
car. Yeah, that's why podcasts are so popular. Thank you for listening.
So anyways, yeah, so I don't know, all my friends had their boy bands as their heroes or whatever, and mine were Dennis Richardson and
awesome.
Tom McCall.
That's amazing.
I know, I'm just kind of weird and nerdy like that.
And you didn't major in politics, did you?
No, I didn't. I majored in behavioral psychology and pre-med.
Oh, well, behavioral psychology is actually better than majoring in politics if you want to be in politics.
I mean, yeah, actually,
so
to tell you the truth.
Pre-med, too, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So what emphasis in pre-med?
General medicine.
Okay.
I always wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Since I could remember as a kid.
Wow. And you could have done that easily.
Well, potentially, but not, morally. So I am, actually ended up checking out the system and, seeing it firsthand, and I was like...
The pharmaceutical-led system?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
These people don't care about curing or healing anybody.
Right.
And, touch...
Good for you. That's amazing.
Well,
wow.
I'm poor, but idealistic.
I know. No, it's funny. Okay, so I was going to law school and dropped out for the same exact reason.
I tell you what.
I was going to go into environmental law, and a friend of the family who was a California assemblywoman had been an environmental lawyer for 30 years, and she said, Ryan, let's go out for coffee. And I'd never met her in person. I'd only heard about her from the family. And she took me out to coffee, and she said, why do you want to be an environmental lawyer? And I told her all my idealistic reasons why I want to, change the world. I want to, make sure that the corporations are kept accountable, blah, blah, blah. She's like, can I tell you what my career has looked like? I'm like, sure. So she said, I've worked 80 hours a week for, causes where we were working very, very clearly on the right side. And in the court case, it seemed black and white, like we should be winning that case. But the corporate lawyers had teams of lawyers, and it was just me being funded by my law firm because I wasn't bringing in any money, but they believed in my cause. So they would fund her as a lawyer to go and fight these corporations. And she was the only one. She had maybe an assistant. And they would have teams of people and they would do this thing in the law where you can basically create mountains of paperwork.
Yeah.
It's what is it? Depositions
or injunctions or filing writs or whatever it is, but you bury people in paperwork.
So she said I would just bury it in paperwork. Yeah. And these cases go on for years.
Yeah.
And you end up losing the case because of one reason or another. And it's usually just some sort of technicality in the law. Right, yeah. Or the judge just gets tired of hearing hours and hours of deposition. Probably, yeah. And so she said, basically, she made no money for her law firm, and she did barely, if ever, won a case. Wow. And she felt like she's made no difference in the world. Wow, that's incredible. Wow, that's so sad. I'm friends with Erin Brockovich. Oh, are you really? Okay, she's amazing. Yeah. And, it's fascinating so cool. Because since the era of, Erin Brockovich, that has, flipped so hardcore. And now it's just the opposite. Now we have, mining, for example, in the state of Oregon has completely gone under. It's, literally for the definition of a nozzle.
right? So we have a
Wow.
piece of legislation, and so nobody can mine an area for gold anymore unless they have a nozzle that's not bigger than like, 1.5 inches or something
For
like that.
spraying water against the earth.
Right.
Okay.
And so that just like put every mom and pop place out of business, and like you have to have now it's like high density, I don't know, whatever, but
Okay.
the
So
bottom
the regulations favored the larger businesses.
and it broke up a lot of the bigger, I mean, it's done some things.
Oh, it broke up the larger businesses.
And it also, but
Oh,
it also
it
like
flipped it. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, and okay.
So basically, the mom and pops are able to mine, but the big ones are not. Is that what you're saying?
No, it was just the opposite.
Opposite. Okay.
So it broke up. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I. So it broke up like all these like smaller, mine. What are they called? Claims.
Claims.
It broke
There
up
you go.
all these smaller claims.
Oh wow.
And then it just like only the larger companies
Yeah.
could keep
Oh, interesting.
everything afloat.
Have you ever
So
seen
it
the
just,
movie
like,
Gold Rush?
conglomerate.
Or the TV show Gold Rush?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ironically, the stars of the first season are
Mhm.
from Oregon.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise
Yeah, and they were all into kind of the mining stuff in Oregon.
me. Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?
I just have a foot cramp.
I just want you to know that if we need to pause and move, you can move.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm a pro.
Okay.
I
You're
keep
awesome.
like waiting for a
Okay,
commercial break.
People were in a very tight, cramped studio here. We're becoming friends very fast. Let's put it that way. But anyways, the reason I brought that up is because, ironically, they came from very mom and pop-ish type of operations, and then when they went to Alaska to compete with like Tony Beats and the other people in there who were running these massive operations, they
Right.
had to really step up their game
Right.
and make it a much bigger operation. So
Mhm.
I'm curious as to what you're talking about here. That's so interesting.
Because a lot of like the river keepers and
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of things that happen here in Oregon that put them all out of business. Like they literally can't.
Okay.
But
Wow.
what you can do is you can take out your little like panning,
Yeah.
and you can like can
Yes.
just like do your own little
Yes.
like panning. Yeah.
Well, that's
So
funny.
it's either large scale or
Okay.
it's like there's no like in between.
Yeah. It's what okay. So that's what those shows are actually portraying. And so the Discovery Channel shows are right on the button, and I'm embarrassed because all my environmental friends hate the Discovery Channel. Because basically that show is all about dominion over the earth rather than stewardship over the
interesting.
earth. Isn't that interesting?
But what about the restoration projects?
Does
are they not
Channel show that?
We don't have TV, so
Oh,
I don't know.
okay.
Like
I don't
you
watch
guys
it
have
that
like
often.
more television.
I know.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of I'm a media maker, okay? I'm a filmmaker.
That's true. That's
But
a good point.
so we do primary research in our home. We watch TV shows.
Good point.
But yeah, no, seriously. So I've watched some Discovery Channels because I have a friend who wants to do an Alaska show on the gold rush in the 60s and 70s, and
Oh, cool.
also the pipeline and everything. There was both going on at the same time, still gold and oil. And so I started watching Gold Rush because of that, and interestingly enough, they spun out a bunch of different shows off of Gold Rush. One of them is called River Gold or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the opposite of the big operations, and where they bring in these tiny little sluices into these waterfalls and they dig for like nuggets
Mm-hmm.
instead of like the big operations, which they just
Yeah,
get
there's a
tiny
bunch of
little
gold in the
powder.
rivers here. Like I don't know why
That's
people
amazing.
think it just stopped being made.
No, it's here.
Like-
It's definitely here.
It's not like it's just
Yeah,
gone.
Yeah,
Like I don't understand people's
yeah.
like it's the earth that like keeps
Yeah.
generating things.
Oh, that's true.
It's
yeah.
not like trees just stop
Yeah.
growing because you cut them down.
Well, it's
I don't
interesting.
know.
So
It's really weird.
I'm
Really-
gonna geek out with you here for a second.
Okay,
So
cool.
I really got into gold for a little while because honestly, and here's why: we were gonna go do a show about the natives of Alaska because we have connections with a native tribe up there, the Inuit, and they have a secret up there, which is that they wanted to pay us to come do a show on them and then get it put on the Discovery Channel to talk about their message for humanity, which was that they believe, they've got thousands of years of prophecy coming to fruition right now, in that they've never once fought a war, their people, but every other tribe in Alaska in the world has fought wars, and their secret to peace is what they wanted to share in the show.
Oh, what? I want that.
I know, right? And so they wanted to help us get the show funded, and they wanted us to come and do a whole season just with the money from the rivers that they know have gold in them.
What?
And they said there's these secret rivers that they've never told anybody about that they go way up deep into the hills, and there's nuggets the size of baseballs.
What?
And they said we could just go on like a 4 to 5 day hiking trip.
Come back
loaded with backpacks full of nuggets of gold, and then we could fund the show.
Dude, what are you doing in Portland right now?
I know. Well, what happened was the elders turned over, and the new elders don't want it. They don't want people coming up there now. And they said, we don't care if our message doesn't get out. They just don't want the world to come to them anymore. And I'm like, well, that's really sad because they have a really powerful message. But I get it. Like, who would want the world coming up to your little piece of heaven, So that didn't happen.
I'm kind of with that right now. Like, I'm kind of like, let's get a couple families together and, like, buy an island. And, yeah.
I'm showing her the Within Reach movie poster. This is the documentary I did. I didn't tell you about this, but I biked around the country for 2 years to visit 100 sustainable communities, and these are all scenes from the different pieces of footage from the movie.
Okay.
And then my cousin...
Oh, it's a basketball. That's the strongest structure known to mankind.
Oh, yeah. What's his name? Bucky.
Bucky. I always think Bucky. Bucky.
Buckminster Fuller. And he invented the geodesic dome, because it's made of triangles. Yeah. And then we applied that. She made this vision of a future city, and it's all made out of the geodesic domes on top of huge buildings. And isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's like sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry, yeah. I love that because as much as I want to live in a rural area, I still want to be near culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told her, like, I described to her my vision of the world that I would want to live in. I'm like, something like the Alps with the beautiful lakes and waterfalls and the forest, but then like a beautiful futuristic city with sacred geometry on the hill that we could just hike to, and then our little rural area. That's still what Constance and I dream of.
That's really cool. I love it.
Yeah, and we love gardening and.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you don't work, you don't eat. Right.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Let's close this out. I mean, we're like probably 50 minutes in right now, and let's give. I just want the audience to know. We barely touched on the topics that Breeauna and I have talked extensively about over the past week as the world has been what it's doing, crying out for change. And I think it's very clear that Breeauna and I have an idea to start a podcast together. And the idea would be bringing the left and the right together. So, I don't know, red, white, and blue or something with the thought of the name. Well, we don't know the name yet, but anyway, so what are your thoughts as we close out here onto what they can expect from us in the future? Because I'm committed to it.
Cool. I'm committed
I had a wavering moment when I felt the pain of losing friends and family this week, and I didn't know if I wanted to continue with this, but I think it's important.
In my own way, and like coming from a biblical perspective or like a follower of Jesus, because I'm a Christian, right?
Yes.
I put it up on my Facebook, like if I lose followers or if I lose support, for following Jesus, then like so be it.
Yeah.
But it's I'm not gonna put party over humanity. And it is like we were talking about this weird sort of cult mentality where when somebody leaves the flock, there's just like this constant, harassing and bombardment. And, I voted for Donald Trump. I support a lot of his fiscal policies. I did not support him calling for military on U.S. soil. I mean, he did not say National Guard. He said military. He said when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Wow, it was in poor taste. We need leadership. I still cannot, for the life of me, figure out why we have not seen an Oval Office address from our president.
It's true. In the past week, we haven't heard anything.
He's been silent. Like, where is the president? Yeah. And I don't want to hear excuses. I just want leadership. Yeah. And, the thing is, like, when Obama was president, the left, if you made any criticism of what Obama and Biden were doing, you were just automatically a racist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
And people might be angry at me for saying that.
I never heard that. That's interesting.
I heard it a lot.
Wow.
And, and you don't know my background. You don't know who I am. Like, you cannot possibly say what I am and I'm not.
Yeah.
That's like, calling someone a vegan. Like, really? You don't know if I'm a vegan.
You don't
even know who I am. Anyway.
So funny.
But the point is, right, like, we need to be able to speak out against the things that are wrong and not have this massive pushback. And like, you saw it, you got massive pushback for filming that beautiful moment. I got massive pushback. One of my media contacts, I sent your information to.
Oh, thank you.
I said, hey, if you want to get an interview with the individual who filmed, this. He never got back to me.
Yeah. And
then almost immediately put out an article saying that the Portland police were ordered to kneel.
By the protesters?
No.
By the police force?
By the police force.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because you know what my experience was, by the way?
The left and the right. Yeah, tell me your experience.
Well, I saw the protesters ask them to kneel and they did it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sure, it could have been just interesting timing where the protesters asked and they're like, oh, here's our moment. We've been told to kneel.
We knew it was going to happen. Like, did they coordinate beforehand?
Right. I don't know. I'm just saying all I saw was a beautiful moment, peeps. I don't know if it was ordered or whatever.
So fascinating.
There's onion levels, like it's so layered. There's so much complexity. Can we just be, like, the truth? And I think this is where we come at the table and we go, yes. Every time we get to this point of, like, what is morally guiding us as humanity? Love. And when you decomplexify things and you just look at the one layer that matters, the core is love.
Yeah.
And when you see a moment where a black protester hugs a police officer, I don't know about you, but I see love. That's all that matters, and I want to show that. And that's what it should inspire people. Whether there's layers underneath that are corrupt or complex doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
As long as we all as individuals follow our hearts, and if our hearts are saying I should go hug a police officer, go do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
I do. I totally. I'm totally on board with that, and I feel that really, like, this is the time where we have everyone's attention. We have everyone in America on the same page.
Yes.
Like, I don't think anyone in this country. I've never seen one single person, say that Floyd deserved to die.
No.
Right? Like, everybody's on the same page.
Even Trump admitted it was appalling at one point. He said that it was appalling.
I mean, you have stupid people like, Mayor Dan Holliday of Oregon City that, like, made a ridiculous comment about how this is not an epidemic, and 6 out of 10 black people were, like, murdered and committing in the process of committing a crime, or they were armed, which is, like,
that's not
true. No, or Breeauna Taylor, right?
Oh, right. She was sleeping.
She was she was asleep. And so, like, just completely, which, by the way, he, like, Dan Holliday actually helped, like, me lose my election.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Okay.
So same mayor that, like, attacked me.
No props to that guy.
Yeah. And like, stood up for this, like, dirtbag wife beater, anyway, so.
I don't really like to create drama, but I've heard stories about this guy and it doesn't sound good, so let's put it that way.
Frustrating. Well, and, like, I don't know. Okay, not going to say it on air. Okay, but anyway, point is, like, there are some people who have said some stupid things, but the vast majority of America is on the same page, and it's time to use that momentum and hurl into, positive, like, lasting change and really do something with this now. And so I would like to call on Teresa Rayford,
who ran for Portland City Mayor.
Yeah, and
she's an African American woman who has at one point led the Black Lives Matter movement in Portland. Right. And what do you think? She's involved in some other new stuff?
I think she's I think that she's working on a new. I believe she's working on a new campaign right now. It's Teresa. And Maria Garcia. They're leaders on the left, and they're calling out their own party for failed leadership. I'm a leader on the right, and I'm calling out my Portland movement. Yeah,
Portland moving forward. Okay.
Yeah, and so I would love to have a project, and, like,
we'll put her website in the show notes, peeps.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I would love to create a project where we come together. Like, so actually, Kim Sordell is an attorney here in Portland, and she's been calling for this as well. So I would love to come to the table, myself, Kim Sordell, Jonathan Lockwood, Teresa, Maria Garcia,
Okay.
maybe.
Can I add in there Ozzie?
Absolutely. Ozzie.
Ozzie's got a great voice for the people who don't have a voice in the city, and his leaning is Latinos. Because
Awesome.
he's an architect, and Latinos build the city, and they don't have a voice.
Wow.
And so he's been really on the forefront of that, as well as sustainability and homelessness. He's obviously working on housing. He has a perspective on how to help solve the homelessness issue, and he's got some ideas that are really good.
I would love to add to that too. Like, we should do a whole podcast on just the homeless issue and the opioid epidemic,
That would
because
be amazing.
there's so many environmental issues that tie into that too. Anyways, okay,
Yeah.
so
we've got some ideas.
okay,
Pete.
so back
if
to
we can get
this.
these people on the show, this red, white, and blue show, that would be amazing.
Yes, and if you could
this.
be a part of it and
Yes,
help
of
set up
course.
cameras and help
of
like
course,
do what
yes.
you do, right?
Yes.
And even maybe lend your voice to it.
I would love that.
Like,
I have to say too that my voice is it's funny. I think our dynamic is really interesting. You guys might not know this, but can I out you as an intellectual? Breeauana is like a genius, literally. Like when she was a kid, she was tested, and she's got all this gifted IQ stuff going on. And I was when I was a kid, but honestly, I think it's possible that your IQ can go down. I think mine's probably been a little unused over the years because I've kind of strayed away from the academia world.
No.
Probably gone down in IQ level, but I think my heart mind is what I bring to the table. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no,
I think my intuition.
I think you're definitely intellectual. I think you're brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really sweet. I was also going to say that as a white male, I mentioned this to you before, that I realize that our white maleness is not so much the soapbox that is needed right now. But what I do feel like is that I can be the brunt of, hey, let's speak up. Let's talk about things that are not being fairly represented, and let's talk about things that are controversial that nobody likes to talk about, and I'll be the brunt of creating that momentum and then open it up to like all these people you just mentioned. And so if I can hold space for a forum and of course bring my opinion into it or bring my thoughts and feelings into it, but also really focus on listening and creating space. And here I've got the technology skills, I've got a media production business, so I can provide that, be kind of a host for a forum like that. What are your thoughts?
I think that you have so much more to offer than just like holding space.
Oh, well, thank you.
Wow,
that's the matriarchy speaking, and that's how the matriarchy would want to run the world. So thank you. That's beautiful. It's such a balance.
I think I said that like in kind of a questioning way that made you question yourself, and I just didn't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
You belong at this table, right?
Oh, thank you. And you're speaking on
have
behalf
a
of
seat.
all people who have a voice.
Yes.
I'm imagining that need to have a voice.
Yes.
Beautiful.
You're a father. You're a business owner.
Thank you.
I don't want to live in a world where people feel like they have to apologize for the way that they were born.
And you know what? That's why I came back around to wanting to do this show after feeling like my voice wasn't needed. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I really did feel like this week I was blatantly told by my community that my voice was not needed.
Dude, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Your voice is powerful.
Oh, thank you.
You're an artist, and what you contribute to the world is beautiful.
Thank you. Well, it's amazing to meet somebody like you who at the same time has the perfect platform to be speaking as a conservative, being a Christian, a mom, a woman, a brilliant woman at that. I think your voice is the kind of voice I want to see amplified more. And look at, as a person that just invited me as a white male to have an equal voice, that's like exactly the kind of world we should be living in.
Yeah, I don't want that to be a big deal. Like, everybody, in my opinion, everybody should have. Everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, that's what this time, speaking of what this time in history is all about, it's giving the Black people a voice that they've never had before. It's giving anybody of color a voice. It's giving, I would say even any oppressed movement of people a voice. But if there's anything we can do as people who have a higher level of being heard in history, let us help. I want to be an ally for that.
Yeah,
you know?
I absolutely, and we need to all be allies for each other. Because how horrible would it be if it all just got flipped and then used to oppress another group?
Exactly.
Or another group.
Right.
Or another group. Like, we don't want to perpetuate the oppression. We want to stop it.
Equalize everybody.
Yeah. We want to just stop oppression. Like, period.
Absolutely.
And we want to dispel these ideas of racism or racial injustice, or like we want to end it, right? Like, we don't want to just be like, well, now it's just white people that are bad and wrong and racist. Like, it doesn't help anything, and it just continues it, and that's really counterintuitive.
Did you see the movie?
And counterproductive.
Yes, I love that. Did you see the movie? What's the Black Panther? Did you see Black Panther?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, yes. That was awesome.
Remember the end where they're in the United Nations and somebody from Rwanda came and said something about how we have something to offer you, and then the white male politician said, "What do you have to offer us?" And then he just smiled and walked off stage. The Black Panther, or the Rwandan, just kind of like, because you've just seen the whole movie of like all their amazing technology, their amazing culture, and how they've kept it to themselves, and now they're going to offer some of their technology and stuff to the world, and then the white person who had the privilege said, "What do you have to offer us?" And he just smiled and walked off. And that's kind of how I see right now our world is getting to bring Black lives to the forefront of, like, this is their opportunity to show what they bring to us. So as a white man, I don't want to be that UN dude saying, "What do you have to offer us?" It's like, I already know what you have to offer us. So people, let's talk. Yeah. Let's get you on the air. Let's bring you out to the forefront and talk and have real conversations that we don't get to have. That's kind of where I'm at with all this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I can...
But I'm not that dude, by the way. Okay. I'm not that idiotic black person or white male who says, "What do you have to offer us?" Like, I'm not... I get that Black people, of course, have a lot to offer us. And I think it's their time to share that, you know? What are your thoughts on that?
I just laugh at the idea of, like... What do you have to offer? Like, anyway, never mind.
Yeah, I think it was a little over the top, because I would be hard pressed to think of anybody actually thinking that, but
I think everybody has something to contribute absolutely, in one way or another, and I think that true leaders and what real leadership looks like is utilizing the best of everybody's skills. Absolutely. And abilities. Yeah. And so, like, I feel like we need to be having contributions, and particularly more contributions on the civil side. And unfortunately, like, we are not raising leaders in our public school system. Yeah. We are not teaching kids how to engage in civics. We're teaching them how to be destructive, and we're teaching them how to be activists. But we're not actually teaching them what civics looks like, or how it's guided, or how bills are passed, or, what the legislative process looks like. In my opinion, by the time any child or whatever, like, individual graduates high school, they should know parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Orders, and how to pass a bill.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
That used to be the law. Yeah. And in fact, kids were supposed to know it by the time they were 13. Yeah. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't learn it until I was in college, and as a political science major, I joined the student body government, and I led a council, the Environmental Council, which was one of like 4 different councils that were subgroups of the university's student government, and we were required to learn Robert's Rules of Orders and run our sub-councils committees on the Robert Rules of Order. I'd never even heard the term.
Right.
I was like, "What's Robert's Rules of Orders?"
But you shouldn't have had to have paid for that, in my opinion. Like, that should not be like secondary school. Wow. That should be primary. Wow. That should not be like any kind of secondary, tertiary knowledge. Like, that needs to be the first and foremost upfront information that our kids are being given, because these are tools for how to live your life. Like, whether you want to be involved in politics or not, politics are involved in you. So take control.
Yeah.
Like, what I can't stand is oppression by this ingrained feeling of helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we keep telling people that they have no voice, that their vote doesn't count, and that they can't do anything to affect change.
I'm feeling that.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, how does that lead to a representative republic or a democracy of any kind, right? So we need to take that back and start empowering people.
Yeah.
Our public school system is a mess. I mean, literally, it's a total mess. And we're not teaching kids anything of use or value. In fact, the nanny state, the police state, has come in and have started to dictate to kids, how to think and what to feel and what to act like when it's not their place. It is not our schools and teachers' job to be parents. Yeah. That's our job.
Right.
And in fact, the African American or the Black community is extremely conservative. Not a lot of people.
That.
Yeah,
I've noticed
very
that.
conservative.
Yeah.
Church going, biblically based, and so this idea that we are, polarized in viewpoints, and that you ain't Black, right? If you're voting for Trump,
right? Or
if you don't know who you're voting for, then you ain't like. I'm just sick of it all. I'm tired of all of it. I want all of the chains off. It's like, it's mental slavery.
Beautiful.
It is, seriously. It's mental slavery, and I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And and that doesn't make me a rhino. Like, I'm sick and tired of having terms be placed on me.
Yeah.
I'm a human being.
I love that.
Who wants to limit our government per the guidelines of our Constitution. Yeah. And for those on the left who say that our Constitution is either racist or antiquated or, it needs to be, like, no, the Constitution is not written for us. Like, if anybody gets nothing else from this podcast, I want this point right here amplified and highlighted, and everybody needs to hear this one thing, because this is your lifeline, okay? You have no constitutional rights. Do you want to know why?
Why?
The Constitution does not apply to you. It was never written for you. The Constitution applies to them, the employees, those who are elected and sitting in office. Okay? The Constitution limits their authority over us.
Wow.
It's a social contract.
Yeah.
It's called a social compact, but it is a contract between the governed and the governing. So now, listen, we elect someone to go represent our interest in parliament procedure, or in Salem, right? They pass statute and code that then applies to us. There's only one way that this works. We abide by that statute and code, and we agree to this governance, and they agree to uphold their oath.
Oh, how far we've strayed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but that's the thing. They have to be bound by the limits of the Constitution in order for us over here to do what they say with statute and code. Now, there is a massive group of individuals who want to use our government like a tool, but it's like a wildfire, right? Like a well-kept fire will keep you warm. Mm-hmm. You turn your back for a second and it becomes a wildfire, and all of a sudden, like, habitat and the entire ecosystem is destroyed. Mm. It's the same idea. Exactly. And we are the keepers of that fire. Mm. We the people. Our Constitution is more important now than ever because it applies, again, to them. I'm so sick and tired of people saying, like, well, I have the constitutional right to assemble. No, you don't. We have God-given rights. Our rights don't come from man. So they cannot be limited by man.
Beautiful.
That's the number one myth that needs to be dispelled. You can't take my rights away. Just like our government can't take our brothers and sisters' rights away that are Black or brown or Asian or whatever. They don't belong to the police officers. Our rights are inherent in us and God-given.
And that's all in the Declaration of Independence.
I mean, that's like
Remember,
the whole premise behind this country.
Right.
Our country was created on that one very simple notion. Yes, that's why it's in the preamble and the Declaration.
Right, in the preamble too, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It's a Bill of Rights.
A Bill of Rights. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's echoed through all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even back to what was the letter to King George before the Declaration of Independence. But there is that too. That was mostly about taxes and all the wrongs that King George had done to the people. But yeah, it was also kind of separating the government oversight or the king's oversight on the people to, hey, these are our rights.
Yeah. So something that really drew my attention in people attacking you, right?
Yeah,
over the phone. Someone had posted a tweet saying, the military are not nonviolent or peaceful. The police are not nonviolent or peaceful. So why should protesters be nonviolent and peaceful?
I saw that,
right?
Yeah.
And I love that because I 100% agree. If our goal is to abolish. Now listen.
To abolish what?
Our government.
Oh, to abolish our government.
Yeah. So now here's the thing. Article 1 of the Oregon State. So actually, Oregon State Constitution is much clearer than our federal Constitution.
Huh.
So Article 1, Oregon State Constitution, gives us, the people, to alter, reform, or abolish our government at any point in time that we see fit.
Wow.
Article 1, pull it up.
Beautiful. Yeah, let's
grab it. Pull it up. Let's read it.
And we'll put this as a link in the show notes.
Please do. Oregon State Constitution, Article 1, states very clearly that all natural rights are inherent in the people.
Okay. You read it over here?
Yeah.
Okay, so is it the Bill of Rights? The Oregon State Constitution Bill of Rights? That's the one you're wanting to read? Preamble, Article 1, Bill of Rights. Natural rights inherent in people.
Mm-hmm.
Want me to read that? Well, let's just see really quick.
Is there the actual text of it?
Oh, this is not the actual text. Let's see.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Section 1, natural rights inherent in people. We declare that all men, or women, when they form a social compact, are equal in right. That all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority.
Amen.
And instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness, and that they have at all times a right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper.
Bam.
Bam.
Right there.
That's the first sentence of the whole Oregon Constitution.
That's it, right there. That is the number one agreement in our contract.
Wow.
The first agreement to our contract.
So when you hear people calling for, hey, the military and the police can be nonviolent and not peaceful, so can we, that's actually, you agree with that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Thomas Jefferson's famous quote is about dissent. Have you ever heard the Thomas Jefferson quote about dissent?
Possibly.
It's basically kind of jumping on the bandwagon with that.
Okay.
And it's my favorite political quote when I was a student of politics. As a political science student, you're required to read all the ancient texts. And yes, but he said something to the extent of dissent is the highest form of patriotism because, a lot of people question your patriotism if you speak out against the government or you speak out, against the war that they're starting. Or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? Actually, dissent is the highest form of patriotism because, it's our job to question the government.
Exactly.
And that's what Thomas Jefferson did.
He
dissented from England.
As a parent, when your child steps out of line or shows a kind of, negative behavior, do you, address that behavior because you love your child and you want them to have a happy, successful life?
Right.
Or do you address that behavior because you hate your child? Okay?
Right.
So it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Responsibility is power. Power is responsibility. They're one and the same. And so when we have this media that is trying to get people to abdicate or reject their responsibility and therefore also their authority, right? We have a huge problem.
You know what you just did? You blew my mind. You totally blew my mind. People, listen to this. You're just basically kind of setting us up as the parents and the government up as the kid.
That's exactly
I've
right.
never thought about this, but if you kind of think about it this way, we all came as immigrants. Every single American came as immigrants from another place. So we all have ancient history behind wherever we came from. And we came to this country as people with past experiences and learned from them. So we're parents, right? We've grown up, we've come to this new place, but we birthed a kid, which was this constitution and this form of government. And this kid has now grown up, and it's now telling the parents, you're old, you're antiquated.
It's a rebellious teenager.
It's a rebellious teenager, but we have to stand as elders now of this country and say, no, government, you're our kid, and you're not acting right.
Dude, I love that. I'm so glad you put that together.
You blew my mind with that.
You just blew my mind.
And this
That's
is the time
awesome.
in history that we're needing to do that.
It's true. We need to check because we're the first and we're the fourth branch of government, and it's time for us to put them in timeout. Maybe give them a little spanking.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
But seriously, like, we need to check their powers.
Yeah.
The military/nanny state is completely out of. It's the police state is completely out of control, and that is like the massive and most major theme on both sides is saying that the police state has to end. Yeah. And so that brings me back to my point about these protests, right? So every single person who showed up at those protests, I swear, you better get your butts to Salem this session and make sure that we beat out the police unions, right? Like, for one, I'd love to bust up the police unions. That's a whole other thing. The police unions and the teachers unions only serve to protect those who are bad actors. And, you know, and then they're gonna be there. Yeah. In Salem, running bills to get more funding for the police state. They're going to advocate needing, you know, more militarized style gear. Yeah. You know, there's one form of crowd dispersal that was not used during these protests that I guarantee they're going to ask for, and it's a 5G. It's like a hexagon shape.
I've seen that on the top of the cars.
Yeah,
it's an audio thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a screeching sound that hurts your ears.
Yeah, it's ELF or EMF, and another way that it can be used is like it's intense heat.
Oh,
and so it
burns you a little bit. It doesn't burn your skin, but it can give you like a feeling of I got to get away from this.
It makes you sick. Yeah, it definitely makes you sick. Yeah, and it's like it's terrible for you. It's like it hurts your cells and stuff, but it disperses crowds really quickly. So I guarantee you they're going to be asking for that. Yeah, right. And so. But here's the other thing. Wow. Just a month ago, you know, we were protesting to open our businesses. Yeah. And like several months before that, we had even bigger protests making sure that we kept our medical freedom so that we weren't getting, you know, forced vaccinated, or our kids were not in order to go to school.
Which, by the way, is going to be another huge. The next thing coming is
that's my point.
At the end of 2018, 2020, beginning of 2021. When the vaccine for COVID comes, right, that is going to be a huge debate. Right. Should we be forced to take it or not?
Well, and so that's my point in all of this, right? Yeah. So if we as conservatives don't protect the liberals' right to protest, then guess what? That's, you know, they're not going to protect our right to protest. And, you know, the ththing is, especially when people don't agree, is when we need to protect each other's rights to speak out.
Beautiful.
And
I like that you put it like, because when it's like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
That's what you know what that is the definition of equity.
Beautiful.
I mean, that's Block's Law Dictionary. That is like literally the original definition of equity is the biblical canon version of do unto others as you would have done unto you.
I love it. Which, by the way, have you ever seen that poster? They've taken out every religion's line in their book that's equivalent to the Bible's do unto the others. And every single religion has it pretty much almost verbatim. Every single religion. That's the golden rule.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, that's why equity is so important. So where do we go from here? So I think that there are, you know, pieces of legislation that we need to sit down and work on to limit the powers of our government. Because here's the thing.
This is where the real change is going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And I was just doing my job is no longer a viable excuse for violating our Constitution.
Like
and
I was saying that, you mean?
Yes. Yeah. And I was just doing my job is no excuse for someone to put their hands on me.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
I will not sit by and watch stormtroopers walk another, push down another 90-year-old man
Oh my God,
and say, I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
If that's your job, then you need to quit.
Thank you. Amen. Yeah.
We have a serious problem in our country when we are sending individuals in to hurt other individuals. Yeah. And like in our state, we don't even need a warrant to go in and take someone's kids. We need a caseworker's, signature and phone call to say, hey, I think this kid's in trouble. Yeah. And, 50 stormtroopers can go, bust in your door and take your kids in the middle of the night.
Right.
So the why might be different for this group or that group, but the end result is still the same, and it has to change, and we have to change it now for all of our sake.
Yeah, and I want to speak to one thing that hasn't been spoken on my behalf very much during this whole shocking lashback I got from my own community, which is that, number one, I am probably the most kind-hearted, soft-hearted human being that you would want on your side. So please remember, people, I'm an ally, especially for the Black Lives Matter movement. I've always been really sad about how America came to this country and stole the land from the Native Americans, wiped them out, basically, and then went to Africa, stole people from their land, and then enslaved them and brought them here. And, I'm definitely aware that our country was built on that history. But the point is that we're here now. We have this government in place. It's the child that's been birthed. It does need to be put in its place, but it's what we have to work with. Mm-hmm. And when people are doing things like burning down the cities and wanting to get rid of the police force, it makes me question if that's the right thing to do out of emotional rage, or if we need to sit down, like you're saying, and maybe try to pass legislation that will put these things in check. And so for me, I'm on your side, but as a student of politics and social change and social movements, as well as environmental and all the good things that we all want for this world, I look back at history and I see the things that have been the most effective, and it's not violence. It's standing up, making your voice heard, but then sitting down at the table and getting the Civil Rights Act passed or whatever.
It's long, hard hours of arduous work and negotiation.
Right.
It would be easy, and honestly, like, sometimes I would love to just be able to rage and like have that just be like, woo, yay, now I'm magically, I'm going to get my way.
Yes.
But that's not how it works ever, because that's not reality. And honestly, do we really want mob rule in this country? Like, stop and think about that for a second. Yeah. Because think about how quickly that can be altered or changed, right?
There's a fine line there. I think what I've learned in the past week, I was a student of Buddhism for a while after my Christian studies of many years and practicing of that. And one of the things I loved that my teacher in that taught me is that anger is not a bad thing. Anger is something to use as a tool to accomplish a change that is needed, but then you need to snap out of that anger and get back to a stable place, because what can happen is if you get stuck in that anger, then you're talking negative momentum and de-evolution and damage.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's really this is a time powerful for us to use this anger to create the change, but the real change is not going to be from the anger moment. It's going to be what happens after.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, like okay, there's this moment. So I love horses, and I've trained horses like my whole life, and a lot of people will train in those moments of like escalation, and they'll like whip the horse and like they'll like escalate and like the horse is being naughty, right? And so then they'll like ride out that buck or whatever it is, and you're not teaching anything in that moment. And tell me if this makes sense to you, but the way that I train is I've learned to ride in those moments of deep breaths. So you stop. Like, you don't just keep riding through the, like, your horse is going nuts and, you know, and bucking and, like, losing its mind, right? Like, you don't just let it escalate. Like, you stop, you de-escalate.
Yeah.
And you take a deep breath.
Sounds like parenting, by the way.
And you let your horse breathe, right?
Yeah.
And, like, and you move forward in that exhale. I feel like that's where we're at right now, is like, we're this young horse that's just lost its mind seeing a mailbox for the first time, right? And it's bucking on the gravel driveway.
Yeah. This happened to you, obviously.
it's like Tuesday, right? So, in the horse world, it's like just another day. But anyway, but, you know, and we have this decision to make, like, you know, do we just run our horse in circles, right? Or do we stop and take a deep breath and wait for that exhale?
Beautiful. Yeah, you know, when our daughter throws temper tantrums, Constance has been so evolutionary with her, and it blows me away because, I tend to take that stance of, like, let her just write it out, like, let her be angry, but as long as she doesn't hurt anybody or anything, you know, she can just do that. Constance, on the other hand, will go in with her and just hug her and hold her and be with her and add to her ability to just get her needs met in that moment. Yeah. Whereas I tended to just, like, walk away and let her just ride it out. I was like, do your thing, girl. But or if she's hurting me or hurting mom, I'll yell at her, and that because I'm like, that's not acceptable. Go to your room. Yeah, go to your room, and that just ultimately it doesn't help. It doesn't work. When I end up yelling at her to stop hurting, it's like it's really not. It's not going to do anything. So, like, the protesters, like, yelling at them to stop throwing things at the building, it's like, it's not going to help them feel heard. Yeah, or chiding them and saying, like, you know, this is ridiculous. Yeah. You know, these are the percentages of police deaths and you know, and it's white people that are actually blah, 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 blah. Like, that's not helpful anymore. Yeah. We're so far past that at this point. So, but on the flip, once we allow them to feel heard and create that space for them, it's time for them to breathe and then go, okay, now what is our next step? And I hope that that's the message here. I really hope so. And I really hope that we can, you know, do what we can within our networks and facilitate that roundtable discussion. Thank you. I want people to come together. I want everyone to be heard. And I want actual change. Me too. Like, I'm so tired of this same narrative playing out. Like, man, if I never watch another person, you know, die in the street because of a police officer again, it's going to be too soon. I'm done. I made a post about Ahmaud in Louisiana. Yeah? The little boy that was running, and he went into the house, and those two white guys shot him in the street. Jeez. That was like 3 weeks ago that happened. I made a post that said, I don't ever want to see another black person killed in the street. And then George Floyd happened. Oh, so my prayer didn't work. And I'm with you. I don't want to see this happening anymore. And there's so many things in our society that I'm just like, I'm so ready for change. And I saw my favorite sign of the whole protest movement and all the media that's been made is there was an old hippie lady. And her sign said, I can't believe I'm 75 or 75 years old and I'm still processing this shit. And I'm like, amen, right? Yeah, and speaking of which, I mean, I wonder how our police officers feel, you know? Well, thank you for asking that, and thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to speak to that a little bit, especially because we do have a family member who's in the police force. I have another best friend from my childhood who's in the military. He's going to be in the Space Force coming this fall. I mean, talk about controversial people in my lives, like, who should not want to have anything to do with me, this flaming liberal. But I do really connect with them, both of them, and have wonderful conversations with them. And, you know, and I want them to know that, like, and I know people hate me saying this right now, but I believe there are truly good people in the police and in the military. And why would anyone, like, take issue with that? That's that's like the same thing as saying, like, all, you know, orange people are terrible. Right. Or all, okay, maybe orange isn't the best example because I'm going to do a little bit of listening. And, you know, the one person that I'm closest to who lashed out to me and hurt me the most or broke my heart the most was one of her comments was that I was saying that, I believe there's 95% or whatever good police officers and there's the 5% bad apples. And same with the protesters. I believe there's like 95 good and there's the 5% that. And so on both sides, we have to look at like they're both good people. They just have these bad actors sparking these things. And then this person told me that, well, I don't really agree with the bad apple thing. And her point, what she was trying to say was that it's bigger than just the police force. It's about the systemic history of what created the police force.
Well,
that is bad.
I agree with that. And I also, like, our history is being hidden, like, at a rapid rate. And, just totally twisted. And so, like, I see both sides of that.
Cool.
I really do.
Yeah, good.
But my point is, I would love to be able to facilitate, these conversations. And, and maybe it happens gradually and in stages where we don't just initially, like, all sit down, like, BLM and then, like, someone from the police department. Like, I don't know. I don't know how ready people are for these conversations.
Right.
It might need to happen in gradual stages where trust is built.
Yeah.
But whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it. That's all I'm saying.
And can I tell you, I've seen some amazing things in the media. There's been some Black Lives Matters leaders already sitting down with the police.
Good.
And I saw even some of them went and spoke with the mayor, and I mean, it's I think you're right. I think most people aren't ready to have those conversations, but there are some pretty evolved people that are already trying.
Well, and also I would add to that, like, I think Rick from Imago Dei would be a really great leader in this. Like, he's been an amazing pastor in the Portland area. In fact, check this out. The Q is a center for the LGBTQ community. And, and Rick, their pastor. So what happened is their HVAC system went out, right?
Okay.
And they didn't have the funds. Then it was hot and like everyone was like sweaty and uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And so the leaders from the Q turned to Rick from Imago Dei because they knew that this Christian community would help them out.
Like, and you're talking about the Q Center, the gay, lesbian rights, LGBTQ center.
Yes. Wow. They turned to the Christian community to help them. And you know what happened?
That's what it's all about.
Check it out. Like, within 4 hours, Rick made phone calls, and they got the $15,000, in 4 hours.
Oh, my God.
Because it meant that much to them to reach out to the Q Center and to provide for them.
That is community at its heart.
Right?
I love it.
How many people know that happened? Okay. How many people even know that story?
And I think we need to get the leaders of the Muslim Educational Trust here. I'm friends with them. I've done a lot of work with them.
That's right.
They bring in all faiths. It's an interfaith community, not just promoting Muslim, but promoting interfaith dialogue. They've been doing it since like 1993, it says. They've got, I've been to events where they had Governor Brown there. They've had Mayor Ted Wheeler there. They have the Gold Star Father, that guy that was speaking out against Trump's comments about people in the military. Anyway, so they really have a large poll of these kinds of conversations, sitting down at the table, reaching across the aisles with all kinds of people, and I think they would love to be part of this conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
especially since they're people of color too.
Yeah.
Their actually voice is probably as important as anybody's right now.
Yeah, I mean. So, I think that's brilliant. And again, I think, either doing this incrementally or in stages, maybe a small group to start and then maybe a larger group to, expand, whatever and however it needs to happen, because it's true, like, it takes money to pass a bill.
Yeah.
It takes money to get public involvement. And the number one thing that I would hate to see is for this movement to be hijacked by one party or another. And that's where I get so frustrated. Like Timber Unity, for example, was this incredible grassroots movement that started as this unique, one logger, right? One logger creates a Facebook post that goes viral, that snowballs into a Facebook group, and then this massive, gathering. This is, that's Lauren and Melissa Hutnick right there. Senator Fred Gerard.
We're looking at the Timber Unity website right now.
Yep.
Which will be in the
trying
show
to-
notes. So she's looking at the picture on the front page, and all these people right at the front on the bottom are people you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Senator Herman Bertschiger.
Okay.
He is the, or he was, up until recently, the Senate Minority Leader.
Okay.
Kim Thatcher, Tim Knott, Dennis Richard, or Dennis Lithicum, excuse me. I'm trying to find...
It says one thing here, just on the front of it. We need new lawmakers who will protect Oregon workers, our families, and our rural communities.
Yeah.
What's the about kind of...
So I'm trying to find Jeff Levy in this picture. Anyway, so a guy named Jeff Levy created a Facebook post, and then he wrote in there, like, hashtag Timber Unity, to stand up against HB 2020, cap and trade.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Wow. And
Yes.
all this came about. Wow.
Well, because it would have taken all those people's careers. It would have taken every single one of their jobs, their trucks, their homes. I mean, it would have completely crushed and destroyed rural Oregon.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. And
thank you for pointing this out. Okay, so we have a lot of groups that need to be involved in this discussion. These are already people that would love to be a part of this discussion.
I'm sure they would. Yeah. But anyway, so all these people like hearkened the call, and they brought their trucks and they drove around Salem, and they were like, "Hey, don't take my job away," basically. Yeah. But it became this whole left versus right thing, and except for Senator Betsy Johnson, who stood with everyone, and she's a Democrat. Yeah. She's amazing. But the point is, this grassroots movement right here got hijacked by political operatives.
Oh, you were telling me about that.
Yeah.
And you were a part of this movement.
I was.
And then now they shunned you because what happened with the politics of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I got, so myself and actually all the founders aren't even involved anymore.
Are you able to connect with them still to get them on board with the discussion maybe?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Anyways, the main point is that I would hate to see that same thing happen with BLM, where it gets hijacked by political operatives, and then it gets steered towards, something that they never saw coming.
And believe me, I don't think that there is one single movement in this United States culture that has not had that happen.
I know.
Starting from back in the 60s, I mean, I don't know about Black Panthers, but I'm sure that happened with them. I know that they were infiltrated by the CIA and the FBI, and then there's all the the communist discussion groups that got infiltrated and then made to be worse than they were, and all the way to now. I personally think that Antifa started off maybe as something a little bit better than it ended up being, and now it's been probably who they say George Soros is funding it or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah. But I just feel like it's a common thing it's a political tactic for things to get turned into something that they weren't intended.
Right. Right. And that was my whole point with reaching out to the media about interviewing you, and nobody would take it. And that's so, normally I have reporters get back to me within, seconds. And they're like, what? You got a hot story? Let me,
What do you think went wrong with this one?
I think that there is a divisive and polarized narrative that is being pushed, and that's what they're wanting. That is the common thread. And
so when they saw the police and the protesters coming together, that was something that they were like, oh, shoot, that's going to hurt our divisiveness.
Right. To me, it's the elite's biggest fear.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
they're
why
like, oh, crap.
That is the core of why I posted it. Because I was thinking, here's in this whole week of media that I've seen, this is the one shining bright light.
Yeah.
And I needed that. At that moment in my life, I needed it. And apparently millions of other people did because it went viral.
Well, and think about it. I want to really, give credit to that moment. Because if you think about it, that was the moment when people decided we need to be more, we need to make sure that these stay peaceful.
Yeah, and by the way, that was Black Lives Matters leaders making that moment from what I saw.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's the takeaway, and they're
heroes, by the way.
They are heroes.
They were heroes for trying to make that happen.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
It is. Yeah. I mean, on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all. Yeah.
And I am sorry, but I have to say that those police officers that took a knee looked very sincere to me.
I don't care. I don't care if they're sincere or not, because I'm not the thought police, right? the action is
Yeah.
they took a knee.
Yeah.
Nobody had to,
Right.
like, you can order someone to do something.
Yeah.
They can only do it in their own free will and volition.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And
By the way, there were some officers that didn't take any.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Right?
So, exactly
So
what you're
those
saying,
who
yeah.
took a knee did it because they wanted to.
Yeah.
Whether there was an order or not, whether it was a publicity stunt or not,
Yeah.
you cannot make somebody do something that they don't want to do.
Right.
And so it happens.
Yeah.
Regardless of intent, regardless of thought, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's what's important, and that's the takeaway. And I think from there we can start moving in the direction that we need to.
Thank you for saying that. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the direction I hope we can, is starting to reach across those divisiveness lines.
Right.
You know?
I want to just completely like dispel, and there's a lot of like rewriting of history that keeps happening lately too, that I'm just like, wait, what? Like Martin Luther King's, quote keeps getting misconstrued to somehow mean or give the green light to rioting.
I think I know what you want. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Saying that rioting is the voice of or the language of the voiceless. Like,
which, by the way, his daughter, who is actually a conservative Republican, by the way, niece corrected the media on that and said that was not his intent, by the way.
Yeah.
Apparently, a friend of mine, Victor, said that he wrote that letter while in jail, and that was a whole diatribe that he was giving on how to peacefully protest.
Right.
So
because he wants to be voiceless. Nobody wants to be voiceless.
Right.
Like, and MLK was all about empowering people.
Right. So it was taken out of context, basically, because he was using that as a way to set the stage for why a peaceful protest is important.
Right.
He was just saying, yes, a voiceless person is going to riot and be violent because they don't have a voice, and there's a way to do it better.
Right.
Which is what he promoted.
Exactly.
Sorry if you don't agree with me on that, but that's what I've taken from it.
Well, people can agree or disagree, and that's fine. I think that needs to be something else that happens out of all of this as well, is that we need to be like, we need to come to a place where it's okay to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and people need to learn how to debate without denigrating into name calling and character assassination. Like, can we get there already?
Yeah.
Because I am so sick and tired of watching people just like immediately develop, like, oh, you disagree with me? Well, you're a and it's like, wait, what?
It reminds me. Okay, so we are wrapping up here. I have a feeling.
Trying.
I love these conversations going. Alien, Earth, peaceful, religion.
Creep.
Okay, so I love these cartoons. About the aliens looking back at Earth and trying to kind of figure out what we're all about. Here it is. So it's two aliens and a little UFO looking down at Earth with all these nuclear bombs going off it, and Joe's saying to Fred, "As near as I can tell, Fred, they're fighting over which religion is the most peaceful."
I think that's a pretty good place to wrap.
I just feel like that's kind of the
awesome.
essence of where we're at. I mean, like, with my peace-loving, hippie, conservative friends, I just got a nuclear bomb thrown at me for trying to show a peaceful, loving moment. So it's like, yeah, I mean, this is exactly what's happening right now. We're, as a society, devolving into like, no, my way's more right, and your way's more... I don't know. It's just like, let's try to be a little... Put things in perspective here, people.
I think it all goes back down to... self-responsibility.
Beautiful.
Yeah. You got to look at ourselves first.
And that's why I came to do this podcast with you, because I tried to just run away this week into this little hermit hole, because I just, like, honestly just F humanity. I've tried to give you my heart for 25 years of my life, and I just got stomped on by the people I love the most. But, self-love is so important, and I'm learning that lesson. And thank you for people like you who support me in that, and you too, Constance. To just look at myself and go, like, who am I at my core? And my core is love. And it's really between me and God anyways. and it's not between me and them. So fuck it. I'm just gonna
Thank
be
you.
who I am, and if it means I get to speak on a podcast with somebody who wants to come together and speak about things we have in common, fuck yeah. Sorry. Yes, let's do it.
For sure.
On that note,
I think a lot more people resonate with that message anyways. From what I've seen, I think, like, I don't know what those types of people have to prove when, you know, they just need to, like, subjugate another person and tell them, like, how terrible they are.
It's another form of oppression that
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is. And it's like this covert hostility.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even covert. It's just completely, like, hostile.
Well, what's funny is I was hanging out with a lot of spiritual communities for a long time in the sustainable communities movement, a lot of New Age communities, and one of the things that the Buddhists actually warned me about the spiritual communities that they'd encountered, and a problem that happens in the spiritual communities is that problems will happen, but because they're supposed to be spiritual and good, they lift up the rug and they sweep all the problems under the rug, put it down and pretend that nothing's happened.
Right.
But what that does is it creates resentment, it creates built up frustration and anger, and then it explodes.
Oh, yeah.
And the shit hits the fan.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what's happening right now.
I totally agree. But I think at the same time, like, I think we've sort of, like, forgotten how, or we've lost some of those tools of, like, how to deal with things.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's why we're seeing things clash the way that we are, because, like, I think people forgot how to talk to each other.
Absolutely, especially with all the phones. I mean, all this happened to me this week on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, the texting, all the texting and stuff. It's like when you have that medium, we were talking about this week, when you have the medium of a screen, you say things that you would never say to a person.
You would never say that. That's my,
that.
So that's my rule for social media.
Okay.
Is I would never type anything that I don't want my grandmother to see.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't say straight to someone's face.
Yeah. And another aspect of that I realized too is you're kind of getting published when you write something. And I think a lot of us are kind of attached to what we write on the internet because it's like, oh, I'm getting published. It's going to be there forever. People can always refer back to it. I'm guilty of that a little bit, you know? So the tone will change. The high horse that I'm on will change. The position of authority I want to be speaking from will change. When I would not be doing that at all with a conversation where it's just going to disappear into the ethers right after we're done.
Interesting.
Because who cares what I just said to you? Granted, we're on a podcast right now.
Well, I do. I care what you say to me.
Well, I do too. But I mean, what I mean is, like, who cares how much of a high horse I'm on when I'm speaking to you? I just want to get along with you. But when I'm on the internet, that's different. I want to be on a high horse because it's going to be out there forever, published. And so I think that people can get a little different in that regards too.
Yeah. Oh man, that poor horse.
That high horse.
That poor horse, man. It's got to, like.
What breed is it?
I don't know, but it's like got to pack around a lot of hubris and ego.
So true. Yeah. You know, this is really, like, important for people to hear. Do you commit to doing some sort of podcast?
I do. Yes.
I do too.
Yes.
All right. Shake on it.
All right. Shake on it.
All right. And do you think we want to call it red, white, and blue, or what do you?
I do. Yeah. Because you know that's the colors of our flag, and I think that,
I love that name.
We should really keep it. I mean, because we are patriots.
Yeah.
We love this country.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we want to see the success and the future success of this country. Like, I don't want to see this country destroyed.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to see it just completely devolve into civil. Like, I never want to see a civil war.
I will venture to say that I think there are a lot of other countries that don't want to see this experiment fail either. You know, we know people from Switzerland, for example, and they love their country, but they agree there's a lot of old energy there. And this one woman that we love, she actually lives on the border of Switzerland and France. She's a dear family friend, and she loves America. She loves coming to visit. And I think it's because they don't think as liberally or as open-mindedly or whatever, conservative, whatever, but just they're really stuck in old-fashioned ways in their country. And it's great because they have a lot to protect there.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. But she loves coming to our country because it's just such an experiment and free to be.
I mean, we're the youngest country.
We are.
In the entire world. And it is an experiment in democracy. And gosh, I would hate for it to end now because that would be like the shortest, experiment in democracy ever. And, you know, I would really like to be able to carry on the ideals of, you know, or maybe even get back more towards like a plutocracy.
Plutocracy, yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I was thinking, I think right now we're kind of at a place where it's like Rome is falling. Right?
Yeah.
But what about ancient Greece? They had it figured out long before Rome did. And, you know, they wrote all the famous political philosophers that I loved were from Greece.
Yeah.
Plato and Aristotle and on and on. And, you know,
Agreed.
and you know, and then there's what about this? What about the Society of Atlantis and like what they were able to achieve? Or there's even other societies like, have you heard of Lemuria or Mu?
Mm-mm.
Those were apparently in the Pacific Ocean, and so Atlantis was more of a technological society that also had these forms of government that were really well thought out. But then there were these other civilizations that were lost in the Pacific, and they were more spiritual minded and back to the land oriented. And so I think that there's something to draw from both of them.
Interesting.
And then we can create a world like this.
That's actually, you know, it's funny because, again, this has to be the last thing because I got to get going.
Sorry, peeps. We're keeping everybody here.
Maybe we can just, like, make this into, like, several different
Yes,
podcasts.
absolutely.
But
absolutely.
this is something that I brought up when I was running for county commissioner because everybody is so concerned with, you know, development. And how are we going to house everybody? And so one very big topic right now is ADUs or auxiliary dwelling units. And I would love to see some, you know, like more sustainable housing because honestly, like if you wanted to build a buckyball structure or a home.
She's talking about a geodesic dome.
Yeah. Thank you. You cannot get them insured. So it's nice that they're the strongest structure on the face of the planet because, you know, they won't but they make the most beautiful homes. I have a friend that lives in one.
Constance,
their home is gorgeous.
What do you think of that? I've been in one. That's huge, by the way.
They are.
They can make them like 5,000 square
exactly.
feet, you know?
Yeah.
And they put multiple levels inside.
Exactly.
I love that.
And they're safe.
Oh, I just got the chills.
They're awesome.
I want one.
So, and so here's the thing, like, and I have friends who have created filtration systems where, you know, the home is completely self-sustainable.
Wow.
Rain comes in, it gets filtered through a rooftop garden.
Oh my God.
And that
and you
filters
get the
all the water.
And energy.
You get all your minerals.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Right? And then that comes down into the home that gets used, and then it gets turned into, you know, compost, right? Wow. And then that goes back into
and gray water.
Yes. And then that goes back into your, you know, vegetation. You're like,
I love it.
Anyway.
Isn't this amazing how we come from different ends of the political spectrum?
Sure.
But these are our deepest dreams.
Yeah.
I mean, with the same.
Yeah.
Same dream.
And
I hear this so often, by the way.
And like, yeah, so like in Oregon, I want to be able to like collect our rainwater. Like, why can't we collect our rainwater? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
I know. I tell you what. I just see, and that's what makes me want to be like this, you know, rebel. Like in so many ways.
Rebels.
Yeah. I don't even think we're recording anymore. But.
Oh, yes, we are.
We are? Okay.
Yeah, so.
But yes, so.
Hour and 30 minutes. We'll make this part a second part. How about that? That first part where we got cut off.
Yeah,
we'll stop that as
even like clip it and just like put, you know, certain things together would be fine too.
Okay.
Like, I'm good with that.
Well, we are committed to doing more of this, peeps, and it's going to be in the form of a new podcast called Red, White, and Blue. Sounds like we're agreeing on that. So give us some time, but we'll get this together pretty soon.
Cool.
Sound good?
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Breeauna,
you.
You're the best.
You
Bye,
are
peeps.
too.